Chapter 15. What the? I lean away from Darius so far that he has to reach out and catch me before both Rain and I fall ass over tea kettle. I have so many questions I don't even know where to begin. What does Nanny have to do with this Order of the Star? And what do you mean that's when you met her? He looks deep into my eyes. There's a pain in his gaze and I can't tell if it stems from a past hurt of his own, or if he fears hurting me with his words. Either way, he's showing a vulnerability I never expected to see. Just as he opens his mouth to speak, I hear footsteps pounding up the stairs. They're coming up 2 at a time, so I know it's AJ. Hey, what are you dorks doing up here? She seems a little out of breath, and I can tell it's not just from her trip up to the apartment. The bar is like packed. Jennifer called a horde of horny moms when you said there was an exotic dancer. I peek back at Darius, who's already staring my way. I no longer notice that sweet vulnerability from 2 seconds earlier. AJ is oblivious to the nonverbal conversation happening as she talks. They brought cash and they're like, I don't know, tigers at feeding time. If someone doesn't start dancing soon, I think they're gonna burn the place down. Stubborn as he is, I've got no idea if Darius will actually help us out. Much as I want to see him dancing while the ladies of Rowley stuff dollar bills into his thong, it's a little hard to imagine. On top of all that, we still have to deal with the bombshell he just dropped on me. To my surprise, Darius simply nods at AJ. Mustn't disappoint the ladies, he says. He winks at me and then follows her quickly down the stairs. Not one to let someone else have the last word, I mentally shout at him. This conversation isn't over, vamp boy. He doesn't reply, but I do hear him laughing in my mind. He's such a damn pain in the ass. I strap Rain into her carrier and follow them down. The moment I open the door to the bar, I stop short, staring in wonder at a sight I've never seen in my life. Like AJ said, the place is packed, mostly with women, which is definitely a first for Morgan's. The few men I see are regulars, all looking fairly uncomfortable. I'll have to remember to comp their drinks tonight as an apology. Or maybe AJ can nymph them all into high spirits. That might be better plan. I also spot Michael and his husband in the corner drinking a few of Rune's magical elixirs. When Michael sees me, he grins and raises a glass. I smile and nod, then follow his gaze to a makeshift stage one of the guys must have rigged while I was upstairs. Rune, no longer behind the bar, is playing a harp. Where the hell did we get a harp? In a way I've never heard one played before. It's majestic, both the song he's playing and the way that he plays. I could watch him all night, but it appears the crowd is getting antsy for something else. Where's the stripper? A female voice yells from the middle of the room, inspiring a cheer of assent from the ladies around her. I scan the room for Darius but don't see him. Did he bail? Is dancing the one thing in life that scares him and he's fled back to his realm? I get my answer almost immediately, as a shadowy figure drops from the ceiling and lands in a crouch on the stage. I don't know if he climbed to the ceiling earlier or just tricked the crowd with some vampire shit, but either way they all lose their freaking minds. Darius is still fully dressed and he doesn't move anything except his eyes as he surveys the audience before him. The crowd falls into a hush, waiting for what will come next. I see Darius give a quick look at Zev, then he turns to Rune, who begins to play something different. This new harp song is nothing like the first. It's fast and intense, and it has me imagining a bunch of serious-faced fae at a rave. As the music ramps up, the dance of Darius begins. It's rhythmic and fast, almost violent but controlled and intoxicating. It's like he's breakdancing and gyrating and booty shaking all at the same time, and he hasn't even taken his clothes off. That's going to have to change if he wants to keep all the ladies interested. As if on cue, Zev lunges at Darius, his teeth sinking into the vampire's black silk shirt, pulling it off dramatically. The crowd screams with fear and excitement. A wolf just attacked the dancer, but now the dancer is shirtless, with his 6-no-weight 8-pack on full display. Good grief, vamp boy is ripped. If there was any question as to whether or not Darius would enjoy dancing for a crowd, that doubt has disappeared. I dare say he's in his element. As he moves into a handstand and does an aerial split, I wonder if he worked as a dancer to pay his way through vampire college. Then when Zev approaches again to bite off Darius' pants, I wonder if the two of them had a traveling strip show act. I move behind the bar to try and get a better view since the place is packed with patrons. Before I can find the perfect vantage point, AJ taps me on the shoulder. When I turn to her, I'm met with an enormous smile. Her eyes are wide as saucers as she opens the register to show me piles of cash within. Runes. Drinks are a hit. And the guys are tipping me like money's going out of style. Plus 2 kegs are tapped and we're running out of all the well liquors. Long as these guys are around, you might have to start running this place like it's a successful bar. The thought is equal parts exciting and sobering. What happens to the bar, to us, to me when the sexies leave? Surely this can't be the status quo forever. My sad musings are put on hold when Zev growls and pounces from across the floor, pinning Darius to the wall, who's now only wearing a pair of red silk boxers that do little to hide his significant size. Ajay snorts as my gaze locks on the sexy vampire. His muscles glisten like he's been rubbed in oil, and as he continues his dance fight with the wolf, I'm mesmerized by his fluid grace and his flexing muscles. Looks like someone's falling for Vamp Boy, AJ whispers with a mischievous smile. I tear my eyes off of the stage to glare at her. I can admire the view without wanting to pay the price to live there, I say. Suyer, she says as she saunters off to fill a drink order. To avoid falling into a lust-filled daydream about Darius, I focus instead on Rune, whose long graceful fingers strum the strings of the harp with such mastery I can't help but feel a kindred connection to him, to his music, to his craft and skill. As if he knows I'm thinking of him, he glances over to me, his silver eyes gleaming in the dim light of the bar, and he winks. My cheeks heat with attention and I turn away, flustered by all of them. Bernie, where did you find these guys? Jennifer asks, her eyes glazed from too much drink, or too much man meat. It's hard to tell. It's a long story, I say, shrugging. I'm super tired of the doctor lie, and I don't think this particular crowd will buy that one anyways. It makes me little nervous. We may be digging ourselves into too many lies and sooner or later the walls will cave in. But that's a problem for future Bernie. Today's Bernie has enough to deal with. When Darius and Zev finish up their weird and perhaps rehearsed routine, the crowd screams and shouts begging for more, but it seems the boys are done. Darius locks his dark gaze with mine and smirks. Was that sufficient? I swallow, still a little weak-kneed as he stands there mostly naked. It'll do. He raises an eyebrow, then disappears with his clothes to the bathroom, where he emerges a few moments later completely dressed, to the utter disappointment of everyone. For the rest of the night, Rune's drinks flow, Darius and AJ charm everyone with their powers, and Zev sticks close to me and Rain nearly tripping me several times. When Rain demands to be fed again, I sneak upstairs to take a break and rest. AJ, Rune and Darius are handling things well enough, and I'm exhausted. When I think of how little time has passed since I gave birth, I'm amazed. I should still be in the hospital, or at the very least resting a lot while kind neighbors bring me casseroles. I read What to Expect When You're Expecting at least 3 times. Therefore, Chapter 16. A Fae walk into your bar and try to steal your baby, then proceed to protect you. Then you find out your best friend is a nymph and your ex-boyfriend is a gay unicorn and your grandmother is a witch who might have been part of a secret society. Someone should publish a new edition that takes all these issues into account, if you ask me. Once in my apartment, I sink into the couch, my feet aching, my back about to break and my head pounding. I close my eyes as I pull my breast out to nurse Rain and am startled when my front door opens and a large white wolf walks in. Jesus, Zev, you scared the living daylights out of. I lose track of my thoughts when he transforms from beast to man and stands before me naked. I've already seen the goods, but I'm sitting and he's standing and he's on full display at eye level. Forgive me, but it's really hard to not stare. Holy hell, do all paranormals come packing? Or just my 3? Not all of us, no, Zev says in a deep voice, his green eyes twinkling flirtatiously. I blush 3 shades of red when I realize I spoke out loud. Must be more exhausted than I thought. But if it bothers you, I'll clothe myself. It's not that, I start to say, but then I stop. Of course he needs to put clothes on. I can't just hang out with him naked. Pull yourself together. Bernie. What's that? Zev asks, turning toward me as he walks to the guest bedroom. His ass cheeks like perfectly sculpted boulders that I have to resist the urge to stand up and touch. Get dressed, I finally say when my brain starts to work again. He chuckles as he disappears into the room, as if he knows what I'm thinking. Undoubtedly I'm not hard to read at the moment. When he returns, he's only wearing jeans, which I guess helps a bit. But those chiseled abs are just as distracting as everything else. Did you lose all your shirts? I ask, bundling Rain into a burrito and walking over to the living room crib to let her sleep. Zev grins. I'm not a big fan of excess clothing. Right. My throat feels suddenly dry, so I head to the kitchen for a glass of water, then go back to the couch to sit down. Zev joins me and without asking permission, pulls my legs over his lap, forcing me to recline against the sofa. What are you doing? Giving you what you need, he says, which brings to mind all manner of tempting ideas, none of which involve my feet. Is that part of the pledge potion? I ask. I have no idea how this thing works, so while my question is a bit cheeky, it might also be spot on. In a way, he answers. We're committed to respecting your wishes as a mother and a woman. But, pledge or no pledge, I understand what you've been through and the care you need and deserve. He begins massaging my legs. As he works his way up my calf and toward my thigh, I give in completely, moaning as his strong hands relieve the tension in my body. You've pushed yourself too hard too soon, he reprimands, his voice as much of a caress as his hands. Rune's potions will help, but you still need your rest. I didn't exactly schedule this craziness to come into my life right now. Lose my words for a moment when his fingers dig into a particularly painful spot on my foot. By the way, I say, switching gears to a much more pressing topic. Do you know anything about the Order of the Star? I haven't had a chance to ask Darius about his involvement, and since the Sexies have a mysterious shared past, I figure Zev might be able to answer some of my questions. He frowns, his lips tightening. Why do you want to know? Okay, sounds like you do know something. Explain. Others will have more information than I do. The Order has a torrid history amongst my race. It was an organization of witches who used their magic to attack my kind, targeting our pups and killing our mates in order to weaken our packs. Tell her the whole story, a new voice demands. Darius has appeared out of practically nowhere, and now stands before us, glowering. The witches organized in order to protect themselves from persecution, from being hunted. Zev stops rubbing my feet, much to my great sadness, and stands to face Darius, bristling at the interruption. We weren't the only ones, nor the first, to hunt the witches, he growls. Rain, disturbed by the men raising their voices, wakes up from her nap, screaming, and I scowl at the two of them. You've already had this fight, and now you've woken the baby. Shame on you both. I sound like an old school marm, but I don't care. A sleeping infant is not to be messed with. Zev's demeanor changes in an instant, turning from combative to repentant. He shuffles over, tail between his legs, to change Rain's diaper and try to get her back to sleep. I use the moment to confront Darius. Now's the time you explain how, when, and why you met my grandmother, I say, patting the cushion next to me and inviting Darius to sit. The vampire casts a glance at Zev, who pretends like he's not paying attention, but I know he totally is. Darius takes a seat beside me, close enough for our legs to touch and the recent memories of his gleaming body to flood my brain. His words snap me back to the reality at hand. I had business with the Order before you or your mother were born. That is, when I met Tilly. She was a powerful witch, their leader, and we were at war. So you were some kind of emissary? I ask. He gives a shrug that could mean anything. And what did you learn? That they were waiting for the last witch to be born as well. The one who would spell the end to all other kinds and return power to the witches. Oh good, another power grab, I say dryly. So their motives are about as pure as all of yours. Zev grunts, proving he has in fact been listening, and Darius just scowls. At least we now know who Carl is working with and what they want. But we don't know who's leading the Order now, I say. It's clearly not Tilly. Darius looks out the window and Zev tilts his head back, staring up in thought. They don't know. No, we don't, the vampire says as he lays a hand on my leg. The touch makes me shiver. And not just from his unnaturally cold skin. Why are all three of these men so good at gentle touches that make me want to be ravaged when there are so many other things I need to be thinking about? But if the leader is not from your bloodline, Darius continues, that's something of concern. Why's that? I ask just as Rune and AJ enter the apartment, finally done closing the bar just after 1 in the morning. On our best night pre-sexies. The place would be empty by 10:15. Not all witches have the best intentions, the vampire says, a knowing look in his eye. Outside of your lineage, we can't really know what the order intends to do with the child. For the next few weeks, things fall into a bit of a routine, certainly more routine than the first few chaotic days of Rain's life. AJ moves back to her own house to escape the cramped quarters at my apartment, but continues to bartend and incorporate more of Rune's drinks into our regular menu. Darius, much to his eternal consternation, becomes a favorite amongst the locals, and even folks from out of town. He and Zev perform their act nightly now, bringing in tourists from Salem, Boston, and all over to witness their ever-changing show. Rune plays the harp and has talked me into playing piano with him, and I have to admit the effect is pretty damn magical. Several patrons record us and put us up on Instagram, which delights Rune beyond measure for some reason. And I can't deny, having these hunky paranormals around has made my bar a whole new type of intoxicating. I thought Rain's arrival would kill Morgan's financially, and the antics that ensued made me sure the business would collapse, but things have turned around drastically. In addition to all of our new female patrons, now that AJ has a grasp of her seductive powers, men who would stop in for a beer after work are now staying for 3 or 4 drinks. Meanwhile, I get to be a mother. I tend to my baby without constantly looking over my shoulder, and I wrap her in a Bjorn and stroll through the bar when I feel like it. I've set up a swing next to the piano, and Rune and I play her to sleep while the patrons watch and listen. For fleeting moments I feel a happiness I haven't experienced in years. But it's a momentary sensation, clouded by the uncertainty of what isn't happening. Despite our best attempts, we've learned nothing new about the Order of the Star or what Carl was involved in. We don't know who else might be part of this. I'm half expecting sweet old Joe will turn out to be the devil himself, maybe with plans to burn me alive. At this point, nothing will surprise me. So when we have yet another week of no new leads, I make a decision. One that won't be popular with anyone. I need to see my grandmother again, I announce one afternoon, looking at Darius specifically. And I want you to come with me. Why me? The vampire asks, setting down the leather-bound book he was reading. Because you knew Tilly back in the day, and you've got those voodoo mind powers. Maybe you can get through to her. We'll leave Rain at home with Rune and Zev so she'll be safe. And hopefully we can avoid triggering my grandmother into another panic attack. Darius frowns. I cannot go out during the day, and there are no visiting hours at night. He reminds me. Like what? Did he study the damn brochure? I smile. I know. That's why we're going to break. Chapter 17. I'd love to leave right after sunset, but AJ tells me I should wait until after the bar closes so Zev doesn't have to be in wolf form and she's not too busy creating a lust tornado of nymphiness. Her words, not mine. So Darius and I plot behind the bar between his dances, deciding how exactly we'll get inside. I should go in first, I say, trying to take charge of our strategy. If anyone's inside, at least I'm a family member and I can make up some story about being worried. Darius smiles condescendingly, and I realize immediately that my plan is unrealistic. You understand that we're breaking in, yes? Trying to enter unnoticed. He makes a very good point. Planning for an encounter with a nurse or a custodian sort of handicaps the whole operation. Fine, I say, reluctantly relinquishing my authority. How do we get in? Undetected? Without tripping the alarms? Well, Darius says with a casual shrug, the alarms sense either motion or heat, and since my blood runs cold and I move too quickly, I'll just go inside and disable the system. Right. The fact that I thought I should take the lead on a heist with a vampire shows my mom brain still isn't firing on all cylinders. We agree on the strategy and that we'll leave as soon as the bar doors lock. And I decide I'll catch a quick nap before we go. As I start for the stairs, Darius stops me. Remember, we've pledged not to take your child without your permission. Right. That's why I can leave her while we go. I feel like I've got this. But Darius gives me a look that suggests I'm missing something. That's correct, he says. As long as you don't give permission. So what, I need to just leave her on the floor and walk away? Either I don't understand what the word permission means, or these paranormal pledge rules are a little vague. No, Darius responds, doing a better job than normal at staying patient. You can hand the child to any of us as you've been doing. You can say play with Rain, or hold my baby. The only phrase you cannot say without breaking the pledge is take the child. Take the child. This is good to know and the type of thing someone might have told me earlier, but maybe each of them was hoping for a slip. So strange. To think that these men, now my companions, maybe even friends, definitely objects of many affections, could still turn on me. But it's nice to know they can't do it unless I give them the go-ahead. Can I say, take the baby? My question's half in jest, and yet these semantics seem to have cosmic importance. Darius nods. Only the phrase take the child will break the bond. With that he struts toward the dance floor and I head upstairs, happy to know I have powers and terrified I might slip up. At 5 past midnight, Rune carries the last drunk out the door and AJ locks. I pass her the baby, ensuring I won't misspeak and destroy my life, and head to the car with Darius. As we buckle in, I realize I'm alone with him for the first time. Yes, we've had moments in one room while everyone else was in another, but now we're in a car driving away. A few weeks ago I would have accepted this as a death sentence. Now I can't help but feel a thrill run through my body. Ever since our shared moment in my room, the chemistry between me and Darius has changed. Less antagonism, lots of sexual tension. It certainly doesn't help that he strips down to almost nothing in the bar night after night. Darius stares out the window as we drive to Ipswich, taking in the scenery, which I'm sure he can see just fine even though it's dark. Does anything look familiar? I ask, wondering how much time he's actually spent in this area. He's been alive forever, so maybe he's summered in Eastern Mass for eons. Who the hell knows? I realize with a sudden sobriety, no matter how much we talk or how long I end up living with the sexies, they will always remain mysteries. They have lived longer than I can even imagine. This is nuts. Only vaguely, Darius answers, pulling me out of my thoughts. There's a hint of sorrow in his voice that he covers quickly. A lot has changed since I last visited, both here and in my world. He seems a little melancholic, so I leave it at that. Plus I've got to start steeling my nerves for the crimes I'm about to commit. There are 3 other cars in the lot when we arrive, which doesn't seem like a lot. Maybe 2 nurses and a security guard? Thin staff to care for a building full of invalids. I'm worried for Nanny, but also relieved that our scheme might be easier to pull off than expected. We pull around to the back and Darius does a quick survey of the building. Are you sure about this? I ask. They might have a more complex system than you're used to. He looks at me, the condescension roaring back into his striking eyes. Eva. Broken into kingdoms protected by magic spells and guarded by dragons. Dragons? You're just going to throw that out there willy-nilly? Dragons. But he doesn't respond. He's already out of the car and moving swiftly toward a ladder that leads to a ventilation duct near the roof, leaving me to stew about dragons and unicorns and whatever else might exist that I always thought was fairy tale. It's probably safest to assume everything is real, but that might make my brain explode. I shove my existential crisis to the side as I get out of the car and glance around, not really sure what to do next. Darius has taken full control of the plan and I'm just along for the ride, which isn't a position I enjoy being in. It only takes a few seconds before the back emergency exit pops open and he waves me toward him. I jog over, noticing how good my legs feel. Eva recovered very quickly from this birth, and if anyone asks me how I did it, I'll just say some bullshit like kale smoothies and yoga. Namaste, bitches. Who would believe the truth anyways? I can barely wrap my mind around my current situation and I'm living it. As soon as I get inside, I see Darius hasn't gone totally unnoticed. Security guard lies unconscious on the ground by the door. I assume this was necessary? I say in an aggressive whisper. Darius looks down at the guard and shrugs. Sometimes an elbow to the temple works more effectively than mind control. Let's go to Tilly. Before I can show him the way, Darius starts striding down the hall toward her room. How do you know where you're going? Magic, is all he responds. At first it seems like he's brushing me off, but then I think about it a little more. Your magic? Or hers? Darius throws a quick glance over his shoulder. The latter. When we get to her door, I'm about to ask how we'll get it unlocked, but my brain catches up fast enough for me to keep my mouth shut. With a flick of his wrist, I hear a soft click and the door pops open. I'm excited to someday learn the extent of his powers, because right now the man feels like a walking cheat code. With a final look behind us, we tiptoe into Nanny's room. Well, I tiptoe. He just walks in his normal stealth mode. Enough moonlight spills through the window that we're able to see her bed. Nanny's asleep but tossing a bit like she's having a bad dream. As I move toward her, Darius stands back by the door. Stop, he quietly commands. I do as I'm told, though I can't imagine what his concern is with me getting closer to my grandmother. She's not well. I roll my eyes at the obvious statement. That's why she's in a home, bro. I realize immediately that my thoughts have been heard because Darius takes slow steps toward Nanny while explaining the dilemma. She's powerfully afflicted. The episodes you've talked about have nothing to do with you or her surroundings and everything to do with what's going on in her mind. He arrives at her bedside and kneels, every step taken in silence. Ever so slowly, he reaches up and grasps her hand. The move is done gently, but Darius seems to tense as the two connect, like a shock has gone up his arm. Seconds later, Nanny's eyes start to flutter open. She looks at the ceiling, then slowly turns to me. After my last visit, I'm terrified at how she might react. Screaming would be bad for our cover, of course, but I assume the vampire could fix those problems. I'm more worried about the emotional damage another episode might cause her and me both. However, instead of becoming agitated or distressed, my sweet Nanny smiles. It's a smile I haven't seen in years, not since I was a little girl and my mother was alive. Then she lets her head fall to the other side, facing Darius, and something even more unexpected happens. It's you, she says softly, the smile still on her face. Hello, Matilda, Darius responds, his voice so full of kindness that unexpected tears spring to my eyes. It's beyond beautiful, seeing Tilly recognize a face and speak coherent words. At the same time, I just want to scream until everything makes sense. After all these years and so much mental unrest, she recognizes the effing vampire? Where am I? She asks Darius, who's still holding her hand. His jaw is clenched tightly and his muscles are tense, like he's the one in distress. In a room that keeps you safe from the outside, Darius answers, but not safe from yourself. Can you take me away? The vampire shakes his head, a look of pity etched on his brow. I can't take you anywhere, you'd be better off. Matilda, do you recognize your granddaughter? She turns toward me, the warm smile still there, and nods her head. Bernie. I'm so sorry. What for, Nanny? I can't imagine what she feels the need to apologize for. The tears I've been holding back begin to spill as I rush to her side, kneeling next to Darius, and only slightly resenting that it's his hand she's holding instead of mine. I couldn't save you, Nanny says. I couldn't save my Lauren, and after I tried, I couldn't save you. Save me from what? When she doesn't respond immediately, I turn to Darius. Save me from what? What's she talking about? He throws me a quick look and with it a mental warning. If you want me to learn anything, you'll stay calm. I nod, his point well taken, and he gives his attention back to Tilly. You've more power than I remember, Darius says, a slight quiver in his voice. Do you know what changed? What happened to your mind? Nanny keeps her eyes on the ceiling, and I see a tear fall down her weathered cheek. I thought I could end the line, she says matter-of-factly, her voice clear and strong. I thought perhaps I could be the last one. I don't understand what's going on, and I can't quite tell if Darius does either. His face looks pained, like he's having this conversation while squatting 1,000 pounds. Why didn't you know better? The vampire asks. The question isn't so much scornful as one filled with regret, a sadness born from whatever my grandmother did. She turns to him again, the smile coming back, though this time with a mischievous curl in her lip. Why don't any of us know better, my sweet? My sweet? That better be some endearing grandmother shit, because I'm not prepared to hear that Nanny and my vamp boy had a thing before I was born. Matilda, Darius says, the strain in his voice more pronounced. The order is back. Or perhaps never left. We know they want the baby, but we don't know their intention. Without your guidance, I fear they're being misled. Tilly's smile fades, replaced by a look of concern. I know nothing. Leadership came through my bloodline protection spells from our family books. It must be anew. Before she can finish her sentence, the door to her room crashes open, shattering the fragile silence. Get away from the bed, screams a male voice. I look over to see a man dressed in black, his face covered by a hood just like Carl's, only it's not Carl's voice. It's obviously not medical staff. Unless they've really changed their methods since last I was here. You, get up. Let go of the woman's hand, he shouts, holding up a gun and pointing it at Darius. The vampire raises his left hand, the one not locked with Tilly's, to show he's defenseless. Then he leans in and whispers to my grandma, just loud enough for me to hear. This will hurt, and I'm sorry, but you're strong. With that, he releases her hand and she immediately starts to convulse violently. It's worse than I've ever seen before, and I'm sure her neck is going to snap. What did you do? The man at the door shouts, stealing my question. He makes a move toward Tilly's bed, but as soon as he lifts his leg, Darius waves an arm and sends the man flying through the doorway, crashing against the wall on the opposite side of the hall. More will be here soon, Darius says, his voice raspy and his eyes bloodshot. Follow me through the window. I can't leave Nanny. What if they hurt her? They won't, he says as he unlocks and opens the window frame. If the Order of the Star wanted her dead, she'd be dead. That's not as comforting as you might think, I hiss, but I know he's right. We have to get out of here, and we can't take Tilly. I glance once more at my Nanny, my heart breaking that I have to leave her like this. I'm sorry, Nanny, I whisper, but before I do as Darius says, I dart into the hall, needing whatever answers I can find. The man he threw against the wall is barely conscious, definitely concussed. As he moans, I lift the ski mask that was covering his face. It's Alex. Joisson. What the hell? The sound of footsteps running down the hall forces my hand, and I sprint back through Nanny's room and Darius hoists me through the window. We run around the building, the sound of sirens in the distance and getting closer by the second, and finally reach the car. There's only one driveway leading away from the facility, and that road's about to be filled with cop cars or Order members. The other option is to drive through the fence in front of me and down a hill. So that's what I do. I start the engine, leave the lights off and slam on the gas. We crash through the chain link and roll into the darkness, just as the lights from the squad cars blink in my rearview mirror. As my Subaru rolls downhill, I realize I just drove us off a snow-covered slope in the dark. I pump the brakes to no avail, the car still rolling and picking up steam. Darius? Think you could? I don't bother finishing the question, assuming his best solution will be better than whatever I could think up. When he doesn't answer, I give a quick sideways glance and don't love what I see. He's breathing hard and still looking haggard. The one time I decide to rely on his magic and he's got the flu or something. Darius, I know you can't die, but I've still got bones and organs and shit that will not survive when we hit a tree. So wake up. As I yell the last part, I dig my nails into his leg and feel a jolt of electricity shoot through me. It's strong enough to knock me against the car door, my head bumping hard against the window. I try to shake it off, but my vision is blurred and it's pitch black anyway. Instead of last-minute ideas for how to save us, I've just got pictures of Rain dancing in my head. Her tiny toes, her sweet little nose. Who's going to take care of my baby? And then my body lurches forward, my sternum slamming painfully against the steering wheel. My eyes are shut and I'm positive we just collided with a huge maple tree. The only reason I'm not feeling intense pain is because I'm already dead. For a moment there's nothing but silence. Finally I pry open my eyes for no other reason than to see what heaven looks like. Or hell, I guess. No point in being presumptuous. Instead I see the inside of my car. I look to the side and see Darius, his hands pressed against the dashboard in front of him. He looks at me, his face less pain than before, the beginning of a smile at the corners of his mouth. When I turn my head again, I can see faintly out the windshield. No more than 10 feet in front of us is a crumbling stone wall, one of those old property lines people made with huge boulders in the 1700s. If we had stopped a second later, I'd be dead. I look back at Darius. Why do you wait? I yell, the emotion from the near-death experience boiling over. I almost died. He puts his hand on my knee, trying to calm me as he speaks. When I clasped hands with your grandmother, I took on the burden of her powers. She has a tremendous amount of magic inside her. That's the reason she's been the way she's been. He takes a moment, clearly still recovering from whatever he's trying to describe. The longer I held her hand, the stronger it became. Had we stayed in contact a moment longer, I might have been knocked unconscious. Took everything I had to disable that man. I barely made it to the car. And then? And then you grabbed me. I'm not sure what you felt, but I felt whatever power that had been constricting me release. I raised my hand to my head, feeling the knot forming where I bounced off the window. I felt something, all right. Guess Nanny's powers almost took us both out. I smile at Darius, glad he's okay, even more glad I'm alive. So I timed it out perfectly then, I say with a slightly unhinged chuckle. I screamed and pinched your leg just in time for you to stop the car. Darius returns the smile, though he also shakes his head. There's still something I'm missing.
No, Bernie.
I didn't stop the car. He looks out at the line of rocks that would have instantly killed me, then returns his focus to my eyes, a new and exciting energy brewing there. You did. Chapter 18. I'm sorry, I must have hit my head harder than I thought, because it sounded like you said I magically stopped our car from killing me, and I don't know. Wrinkling your outfit. My voice carries in it all the disbelief I feel, mixed with an unhealthy dose of adrenaline and raw nerves. That is correct, he says, tugging on his jacket. My clothing is not wrinkled. I raise an eyebrow. That's your takeaway from this? My takeaway is that a small thread of your grandmother's powers traveled through me and into you, though I do not know how such a thing would be possible. He tightens his lips in annoyance. Oh, is that hard for you? I say, laying the sarcasm on real thick. Something's out of the ordinary and confusing? Poor little vampire. He ignores my comment, so I ignore him, and instead I look down at my hands. Like I just grew them from scratch and they might start spitting out lightning or magic balls any moment. When nothing extraordinary happens, I sigh, little disappointed. I've never understood in books and movies why the heroine or hero resists when they find out they're special or have magic. Music was what made me special, and I was and am grateful for it. Otherwise I would have been just another small-town girl who ended up married to her high school sweetheart and popping out kids while stealing away every week for a night at the pub. I close my eyes, letting the painful truth wash over me. If it weren't for the sexy showing up, that's exactly where my life was headed, even with this musical gift I've been cultivating for years. Well, maybe except the part about being married to my high school sweetheart. How did I end up here? I was on the right path, the path that led out of Rowley and into the great wide world where all my dreams lived, when I self-sabotaged and ended up right back where I started. I wouldn't trade Rain for anything, but I wish I could have had her under smarter circumstances. But then again, aren't these the circumstances that brought these men into my life? Things might be difficult and complicated, but I'm not particularly eager to see them leave if I'm being honest with myself, even though that's what will ultimately happen with or without my baby. Okay, enough self-loathing. Jesus, a fleeting moment of thinking I was magical. And now I want to throw a huge pity party. Buck up, Bernie. I look back at Darius, who's watching me carefully. What? Did I grow horns or something? He shakes his head. But you are exhibiting signs of a serious concussion. PFT. I'm fine. But even as I say it, I realize I've been slurring my words this whole time, and everything is a bit fuzzy around the edges. The fact that I didn't even notice scares me more than the actual symptoms. Let's just get back to the bar. But as I try to start the car, it sputters and dies. Shit. You are in no position to drive. Nor is your vehicle, it would appear. Ha, very funny, mister. What do you recommend? First, we must heal you. Then I will carry you home. My head begins to pound, like the pain was on a temporary leave of absence and is back in full form. I slump against my seat and close my eyes. Just for a moment. I start awake at the sound of Darius calling my name. Shoo. I hiss, not opening my eyes. You're making it worse. Bernie, you need to look at me. I really want Vamp Boy to back the hell off and let me sleep, but then I remember where we are and what just happened, and my heart starts thumping aggressively against my ribcage, jolting me back to reality. Shit. Okay, I'm here. You mentioned healing? Yes, let's do that before I lose it again. Do you have something like Rune's magic elixirs? Darius smirks. Something like that. But it's more direct from the source. Right, well, lay it on me. I'm ready to go home. I expect the vampire to pull a vial of some glowing shit out of his pocket, like a normal magical dude. Instead, his eye teeth elongate and he brings his wrist up to his mouth and bites. What are you doing? He offers me his blood, pulsing out of his vein like it's a delicacy. What am I supposed to do with that? I ask, my stomach roiling in. Displeasure. Drink. It will heal you. No thanks, I'm good. Plan B. There is no plan B, Bernie. This is the plan. The only plan. We need to get you home, but not in your current condition. He stares at me, his dark eyes wide and pleading. Now drink. I feel the compulsion and I smack him without thinking. Don't you dare mind control me, I hiss. That is against the rules. What rules? He asks with all the arrogance of an eternal being of beauty and power who's used to getting whatever he wants. The rules I put in place. I'm the queen of this castle, and what I say goes. He narrows his eyes at me. Fine, then drink before you pass out, you foolish, stubborn woman. Or do you want to leave Rain without her milk source and mother? That's a low blow, I say, but I can't argue with him. Not about that. Would do anything for that little girl. Including, it would seem, sucking on some vampire blood. Just as I lean in, I pause. Wait, this won't make me a vampire, will it?
No.
Our transformation ceremony is much more complicated. Good, I say. I'm rather fond of the sun. Bracing myself for the grossest shit ever, I move my mouth apprehensively toward his bleeding arm, nervous about how his blood will taste, what it will make me feel, and how I'll react to having my lips on his skin. My mouth reaches the wound and I feel a drop of blood on my tongue. There's not a strong taste to it, maybe a little bitter, but it's thin like water and doesn't have me gagging. As soon as I swallow, I feel a surge ripple through my body. It's like the feeling of getting goosebumps, but the bumps are in my veins. The rush flows to every part of my body, and as it reaches my head I feel the ache start to fade. Add this to the list of things to sell at the bar, Tylenol capsules filled with vampire blood. Do you feel better? Darius asks, but the tone of his voice shows that he already knows the answer. I realize I must be sucking pretty hard on his wrist, but I can't make myself stop. Every drop makes me feel better and gives me more energy. Finally, the sexy vampire takes his arm away from my hungry mouth. Enough, he says with a playful smile. I need to keep at least a little in my veins. He starts to pull his sleeve back down, but I notice a drop of blood trickling down his wrist. Before I can stop myself, I lunge at his arm, my tongue flicking out for that last drop of powerful blood. Our faces are now inches apart. I hold his gaze as I lick my lips, savoring every molecule of his life force. What started as an unappealing proposal has turned into an arousing endeavor, and I'm quite sure Darius feels the same way. Perhaps this was his plan from the beginning. I'm already so close. I already tasted him. What's the harm in a little kiss? No harm at all, he whispers into my mind, and before I can think another thought, our lips are touching, our tongues swirling around each other's. Seems Darius has regained all of his strength since being overwhelmed by witch power, as he reaches around me and pulls our bodies tighter together. His kisses are forceful but soft, firm but sweet. I run my hands through his pitch black hair and over his neck, his smooth skin so intoxicating that I just want to touch him everywhere. I bite his earlobe as he moves a hand slowly down my side and then slips it under the waist of the back of my jeans. The feeling of his touch on my bare skin makes me nibble his ear almost too hard, so I move my mouth back to his. He continues to rub and caress in all the right ways, and I find my hands undoing his pants and dancing my fingers along the top of his silk boxers. Break the kiss so I can look into his eyes as my hand starts to move under the waistband. He returns my stare with a fiery passion, and I know exactly where this little kiss is headed. If we weren't in a car, our clothes would be scattered about the room and we'd already be under the sheets. But we are in my car that won't start. Miles and miles from my home. And my baby. As much as my body is screaming for this, it's not right. My mind is elsewhere, and that's where my body should be too, even if it means I have to stop touching the beautiful man in my arms. Darius senses my hesitation, and it seems he understands the timing is all wrong. He also probably snuck in and listened to my thoughts. You're right, he says, his lips still brushing against mine, my fingertips still inches from their prize. When we finish this, and make no mistake, we will finish this, he says, his voice deep and hypnotic against my ear. It will not be under such limiting circumstances. I will take my time memorizing every inch of you, playing your body like you play that piano, making you sing for my touch until you are begging uncontrollably. His words, the thrill of them, the feel of him still pressed against me, does nothing to de-escalate the growing need in my body. And then, as if he knows just how aroused he's made me, he pulls away with a smirk. In the meantime, I will carry you back. He starts to retreat, but no way am I letting him get the last word. I pull him back for one last kiss, and as I claim his mouth with mine, I grab his hand and slide it up to my breast until he is arching against me, as full of desire as I am. Then I force myself away and try to put myself back together. Now your clothes are wrinkled, I say with a wink. When I emerge from my car, everything feels different. Not only are all my injuries healed, but it's like I've gained extra senses. I can hear a night owl in the distance, its wings ruffling as it hunts its dinner. The sound of snow falling. The breathing of a small critter hiding in a log 50 feet away. It's all overwhelming and I don't know where to focus. I look to Darius wide-eyed. Is this your blood or more of my grandmother's power? My blood, he says, his gaze taking in my disheveled clothing. Despite the cold, my cheeks heat as I think about how close we got to everything. How close we will get again if either of us have our way. Traditionally, it would be a bit too soon to explore these urges after giving birth. But I'm pretty sure the Fae magic, vampire blood, and I cringe at the thought, but werewolf hair have all done their part in getting my body to a better place than it was even before I got pregnant. You might notice other side effects as well, he says, and before I can reply or ask what he means, he literally sweeps me off my feet and into his arms. There is no chance to talk as Darius begins to run. I would have expected it to be uncomfortable bouncing around in his arms, but he's so fluid, so graceful, it's like we're flying. The wind blows through my hair, snow collecting in it, but I don't even notice the cold. My body is still hot from within, and with my face tucked in his shoulders and his arms gripping me firmly, it's so very easy to get lost in the fantasies of what we almost did. By the time we arrive home, which should have taken hours or days, I'm almost disappointed the trip happened so fast. It's just after 2 a.m. when we walk into the apartment where Rune, Zev and AJ are waiting in the front room. One look from AJ and it's clear she knows I had some sexy times with Vamp Boy. She arches her eyebrow and looks between us in a not-so-subtle way. Since that wasn't the point of the trip, I ignore her and head straight to Rain, who's happily snuggled in the arms of a werewolf. As I quietly approach my sweet sleeping girl, Darius fills everyone in on what we discovered. Tilly possesses more power than I've ever seen in one witch, and tonight we were confronted by another member of the Order of the Star. Rain is sleeping and she looks so peaceful with Zev that I don't want to disturb her. Instead, I slide onto the couch next to him. He glances at me with a warm smile as Rune brings me a cup of coffee sprinkled with magic like coffee needs anything extra to make it wonderful. It is the drink of the gods. After all, did they hurt Tilly? AJ asks, hopping from her chair like she's ready to cut a bitch. I shrug, my eyes stinging again at the memory of leaving her so vulnerable. Darius doesn't think they will. But you should have seen her when Darius held her hand. I got her back. Just for a few moments, but I got Nanny back. Zev uses his free arm to wrap around my shoulder and pull me into a warm hug, dispelling any remnants of chill from the trip through the snow and offering me unspoken comfort as I grapple with my emotion. And that's not all, I say before Darius can continue. You're never going to believe who it was this time. This is obviously directed at AJ since no one else in the room would specifically care. Who? AJ asks, her eyes widening.
Joesson.
My best friend's jaw drops. Alex? That's impossible, she sputters. I know, I say as flabbergasted as she is. The guys just stare at us, waiting for one of us to make sense.
I explains.
Alex was in an accident on prom night years ago. He was in a car crash and flew through the windshield. His brain, it never worked right after that. He's been in a home ever since. I shake my head. I don't get it. He seemed normal given the circumstances. But it was definitely him. I checked myself. AJ begins to pace the room while I snuggle more into the nook of Zev's arms. He looks down at me, concern in his eyes. You've had vampire blood. What happened? Oh yeah, that's the other thing. I wrecked the car. Hit my head. Darius healed me. A growl forms deep in Zev's chest. I'm sure he did. Darius scowls at the werewolf. It was that or let her pass out and suffer worse injury. What would you have me do? Not bind her to you, he says gruffly. Rune comes over and lays a finger on my wrist, while staring into my eyes, then nods. Darius did the right thing. It could have been much worse if he hadn't acted quickly. This shuts Zev up, but I can feel the tension in his body. The werewolf is definitely pissed, and now I have a lot of questions about this binding shit. But Rain has clearly not enjoyed the change in Zev, and she wakes up screaming and ready for her midnight snack. The werewolf's demeanor changes instantly, cooing and loving on her as he passes her to me. It's really incredible to see how each of the sexies are with my baby. All their bad boy bravado shuts down when my little one is around. She's got them wrapped around her tiny, adorable little finger. I take her into my bedroom and close the door, wanting some privacy for myself. And knowing Rain could use less stimulation right now, you could cut the tension in the living room with a knife. I ease into my bed and cuddle my child as she feeds, my mind worrying over all the different threads in my life that seem to be unraveling. I want to get Darius back in to see Nanny, but that seems risky after the ruckus we've made. Even if Darius doesn't come with, I need to check in on Nanny to make sure she's okay. I also need to get my car back. And I'm going to need to talk to Joe and find out what the hell is going on with his son. Determined to do just that, I fall asleep with Rain in my arms and am ready the next day to confront a man I've known literally my entire life. Only catch is, he doesn't show up to Morgan's that night. Or the next. I ask Frank about it, but Frank is as perplexed as me, saying he hasn't heard from Joe in days. By the end of the week, I've called to make sure Nanny is safe. She is, though. The staff gives me very few details about an incident that disrupted her. Also know something is definitely off with Joe. At the close of the night, I pull the sexies aside and voice my concern. I think something happened to Joe. We need to go check on him and find out what's going on. Leaving the baby with AJ and Rune, Zev, Darius and I head to Joe's. One of the sexies managed to bring back my car, but Darius determined it was a waste of metal and somehow acquired me a brand new Jaguar. You realize you've painted a big red target on me with this, right? Darius sniffs. You can just tell people it is mine if you must. Zev snorts in the back. Darius has always been a bit pompous. He can't help it. You know, when AJ and I were little and would get into fights, Nanny would lock us in the bathroom together until we resolved our differences. I say, turning onto Joe Street. I park in front of his house and twist to face both of them. We would pretend to make up, and we thought we were so clever, but of course in the process of negotiating our fake peace we actually made up in the end. I'm thinking you three need some quality time in the bathroom together. Seems like you were close once upon a time, and I think you could be again. You have a lot in common. I wink and get out of the car with the boys following. We approach the house cautiously, but we don't get far before both Darius and Zev stop and look at each other, their faces unreadable. What? I ask, walking to stand between them. Zev glances at me. I'm so sorry, Bernie. The werewolf just stops there, leaving Darius to finish his thought. Joe's dead. Chapter 19. I stand in stunned silence staring at the house AJ and I had visited many times as teenagers, back when AJ and Alex dated, before John came along and before Alex's accident. It wasn't something I ever talked about with Joe or my grandparents what happened that night. Michael and I went to the prom with AJ and Alex, but Alex got too drunk and none of us were willing to drive with him, so he left alone. And then he crashed. It's a night that weighed heavy on all of us. I always thought it was part of the reason Michael broke up with me. Now I know better, but still. Emotion clogs my throat and my eyes pool with unshed tears as Darius and Zev each take one of my hands. They don't speak and they don't demand anything from me. They just stand by my side, holding my pain in the silence. After several minutes, a tear finally escapes and falls down my cheek. Darius turns to face me, using his free hand to catch the tear with the pad of his thumb. It takes me a moment before I can speak. How? We'll find out, Darius swears. I nod and release their hands, missing the contact instantly, the cold touch of the vampire and the heat of the werewolf, but I know they can't get me. Answers if they're tied to my side. Crossing my arms over my chest to ward off a chill, I watch as Zev sheds his clothes and shifts into wolf form, then sniffs around the perimeter of the house. Darius dashes toward the side door with his impossible speed and is inside before I can blink. Nothing makes sense in my world anymore, so logically I know Joe could have been evil or mixed up in some dark magic, but my gut says otherwise. Maybe Alex did recover from permanent brain damage, and maybe my ex is a unicorn and my best friend's a nymph and I'm from a line of witches. But it'll take a lot more than that to convince me Joe is anything but good. He was always so sweet, looking out for Tilly while she still lived at home, then taking care of Ed once he was alone, and then he took care of me. Even if Darius and Zev come back and tell me he was part of this ridiculous order and he got killed for not stealing my baby when he was supposed to, I'm not ready to believe them. Some people are still good. Not everyone is. Tricking me with magic and lying about their past. Joe's on the right side of this, I'm certain. Zev returns first, shifting back into human form and standing naked on Joe's front lawn. Darius arrives a moment later as Zev is getting back into his pants and shirt. I'm just hoping none of Joe's neighbors are watching us. So they just got an eyeful. Now clothed, Zev steps over to me. I'm so sorry, Bernie, he says as he pulls me into a hug. What happened? I ask, hoping they'll say it was natural causes, but knowing they won't. Nothing is natural in my world anymore. Darius answers first. I can't say. He's seated at the dining room table, glass of water by his hand. No blood, no sign of struggle. Zev nods, stepping away from me but keeping his hands on my shoulders. The smell works with our timeline. He's been dead for 4 days, 5 at the most. I will say. He pauses mid-sentence, taking a long full breath, then slowly breathing out. Bernie, do you know Joe's wife? I shake my head. I knew her, past tense. She died a couple years back. Darius and Zev share a look. What do you smell? The vampire asks. I don't know, Zev answers. But it's not a scent that should be here. Not if Joe's wife really died 2 years ago. Not if he's been living alone. How the hell do you smell that? I probably sound angrier than I am, but I take so many impossible outcomes as fact these days that I just need a little piece of logic to hold on to. The werewolf frowns, bringing me in for another hug and whispering the answer in my ear. The same way I smell your fear and your sorrow, and the many other things you feel. His answer doesn't really have a science behind it, but it'll have to do for now. It also makes me a little bashful, knowing that not only can the vampire hear my thoughts, but the wolf can smell my feelings. Not a lot of privacy around a group of men who make me think and feel the types of things I'd rather keep secret. I pull out of Zev's arms and take a deep breath, trying to steady myself and think clearly. What do we do about Joe? The question brings a steady flow of tears as the reality of his death starts to sink in. Darius steps forward, putting a hand on my shoulder and softly running it down to my elbow. Anything we do will only bring attention to us, and there's already too many watching. But we can't just leave him there. I'll call the police or an ambulance. I start to pull my phone from my pocket, but Darius stops me. Make that call. But not while we're here. We need to be back with Rain. I'm more convinced of that now than ever. My phone is in my hand, and I have half a mind to ignore Darius even though he's probably right. Joe just deserves so much better. He's a stone's throw away, lying dead at his table, and I'm just going to leave? I nod, acquiescing to the vampire's point. As I look down, I notice I have a new text message. It's from AJ, 2 minutes ago, and it just says, help. The instant I show the message to Darius, I'm in his arms and we're bounding through the woods of Rowley. Joe lives just a few blocks from Morgan's, and clearly this vampire thinks it will be quicker to leap over fences and barrel through snowbanks than take my fancy new ride. Zev follows close behind once again in wolf form, sprinting on all fours. Darius comes to a stop when we get close to Morgan's, waiting 2 seconds for Zev to catch up. I watch the two of them make eye contact, surely discussing an unspoken plan, and then Zev darts off into the shadows. Before I can ask where he's going, which like an idiot I was about to do, Darius whispers into my mind, we mustn't speak. Zev's going to check the perimeter to make sure we're not being lured into a trap. Then we'll follow him inside. I think some sort of affirmation, probably just the phrase, aha, and then hold my breath while I wait for Zev to lead us in. My baby's in there, and while I take the slightest bit of comfort in knowing Rune's nearby, I'm starting to think that there's a limit to the powers my sexies possess. There, Darius' mind speaks, and I follow his gaze to the roof where the wolf now stands, hold tightly to my neck. I wrap my arms around him as firmly as I can, and a rush of wind hits my face. as Darius takes 3 huge steps and then leaps into the sky. I guess he's jumping, but I feel like springing from the ground to the top of a 2-story building is more like flying. And just as impressive as him going airborne is the silence with which he lands. Dude is high-level stealth mode. Zev gestures us forward, leading us toward the roof above the bathroom. As he nears the edge, he shifts back from a wolf to a naked human. The cold doesn't seem to bother him. It also doesn't affect him in the ways it might affect other men. I can't help but notice. The baby is in the bedroom, Zev says in a whisper, not nearly as aware as I am of his nudity. I'm guessing she's being concealed by Rune. There are at least 4 bodies in the front room, though I can't hear all their movements. As well, because AJ won't stop talking. She seems very angry. I bet she is. But whatever rage she's dishing out now, it's going to look like a soft rap on the knuckles compared to the fury I'll unleash. Darius, go in first, Zev continues. Careful of any energies you feel. Not sure what's Rune's magic and what's not. I'll know, Darius says in a deathly serious tone. Then he quickly vanishes over the edge of the roof. I shiver, glad I'm not on the receiving end of him when he's angry. Zev turns to me. We need to get inside, but I want you to stay in the bathroom. Not a chance. I hiss with as much quiet rage as I can. I need to find my baby. You won't be able to see her, Zev says. I'm sure Rune took every precaution and now you need to do the same. You're too important, Bernie. Please do as I ask. His forest green eyes, practically aglow in the moonlight, plead with me. I give the slightest nod, knowing he's right, but not trusting myself to heed his advice. I've said before that I'll die for my child, and I don't think anyone can talk me out of that. Zev takes me under an arm, then uses his free hand to lower us down to the window that Darius left open. I can't imagine the strength it would take to hold 2 adult bodies with one arm, but I suppose his strength is as magical as all the other magical shit that's taken over my life. Once in the bathroom, he returns to wolf form and creeps to the door, listening to whatever sounds are coming from the bedroom. He's probably trying to hear movements and smell feelings or some shit, because the dialogue is plenty audible from where I'm standing, even with my bullshit human hearing. Mostly because of AJ. I don't care, Alex, my friend yells. There's nothing you could say that would make me give 2 shits about our past, because what you're doing is wrong. Now get this goddamn blindfold off of me. How can you trust these guys and not me, AJ? Alex sounds serious. How can I? You pretended to have brain damage for 10 years.
I make the
really good point. I wasn't pretending, I was. Look, you don't understand and you're not. Alex, stop. Another voice enters the conversation, this one a woman's. Gee, sounds familiar, but I can't place her. We don't have time to debate these issues, the woman continues. I've come for the child, and I'm not going to waste time trying to convince you. You sound familiar, AJ says, mirroring my own thoughts. The voice has a nostalgic quality, like a high school teacher or someone I once knew long ago. Chances are pretty strong that's who it is. AJ and I definitely called Ms. Day a witch all the time. Maybe the reason she got so mad is because we were right. The voice ignores AJ entirely and speaks directly to Rune. Fae, you're running out of options. I've got plenty of spells left to try, and sooner or later you'll lose consciousness and any mystique you've created will vanish. Jesus. I can't tell what's going on, but it appears Rune doesn't have the upper hand. Whatever he did to help hide Rain seems to have put him in a bind. Zev's hackles are up, and his left paw is raised like a hunting dog ready to strike. But where the hell is Darius? I hear Rune clear his throat before speaking. Like you said, witch, we're not debating anything. Please continue with your spells. His voice is extremely strained, even if he's still putting up a verbal fight. I can only imagine what's been done to make such a strong man suffer so much. I wish I could do something to help him, but I know I'm way out of my depth. Very well, the voice says with a trace of disappointment. God, she sounds more familiar with every word. Who is she? I hear the clinking of some glass, maybe a spoon hitting the edges of a cup as it stirs. Would you like to drink this one on your own, Faye?
Orchelli pour.
It in your eye like the last. Before Rune can respond or not respond, depending on how he prefers his torturing, Alex speaks up. Hey, we might have a problem. What? The mystery woman asks sharply. I just looked at AJ's phone. Alex fumbles his words, sounding pretty Nervous just like the guy I remember from high school. She sent a text. To Bernie before I took it away, I guess. After a second of silence, I hear a loud slap. Ow! Goddammit, that hurt. Alex screams, obviously on the receiving end of a smack across the face. Did it? The woman asks. Because if that hurts, you're not going to enjoy being ripped apart by a werewolf at all. You certainly won't. Darius has joined the mix, probably appearing out of nowhere in his annoying way, which I swear I will never reprimand him for again if he can get us out of this mess. His arrival seems to put a temporary halt on conversation as fighting ensues. I hear crash after crash and loud growls from Zev, who sped out of the bathroom without me even noticing. Hold on, Rune, Darius says. I don't know what he's asking the Fae to hold on to, but the fear in the vampire's voice is tangible and makes my own fear that much stronger. Snapping myself out of panic mode, I scan the bathroom, searching for any sign of rain or a weapon I can use, anything to make myself useful. Maybe this is my chance to sneak into the bedroom and try to find my baby. I feel the urge to help, to do something more proactive than just sit on my ass like a damsel in distress. I want to help Rune or distract the attackers, so Zev can maul them or Darius snap their spines. But more than that, I want to find my baby. I creep toward the door, trying to be wary of the fight that's going on while staying under the radar. Peering down the hallway, I see a whirlwind of activity. Chairs crash against the wall, flashes of light scorch my plants, and AJ lies slumped against the floor, a blindfold tied around her eyes. I'm about to throw caution to the wind and rush to help when I see her push herself up. Rune. Darius sounds more anxious this time, causing my anxiety levels to spike as well. How dire is the situation out there? Is Rune going to die? Where the hell is he? But before I can worry about the guys, I need to find Rain. I take a deep breath and slink down the hallway toward the bedroom, hoping I can turn the corner into my room before someone grabs me. I make it through and close the door quietly behind me, leaning against it, while I reach behind my back to turn the lock. I search the room, starting with the crib and moving over to my bed, hoping a mother's intuition will help me find a baby that's shrouded in a magical illusion. As I fumble around checking the most obvious and oddball places for a baby, I hear a soft cry. It doesn't sound like she's in distress, but it still makes me that much more panicked about finding her. I move more slowly, listening as hard as I can, inching closer to the source of the whimpers, and then the world goes dark. I can't see anything and sounds are muffled. My first guess is that the lights went out. My second is that I've been knocked out. My third is that a bag's been put over my head. When I try to lift my hands up to my face, someone with an iron grip grabs my wrists and thrusts them behind my back, binding them with something warm. Ties too fast for a normal rope but doesn't hurt like a zip tie. Before I can guess what's holding me in place, I'm hoisted over someone's shoulder and carried toward the back wall. I'm helpless with no hands or vision, and I can only scream as I feel myself falling out the window and through the cold night air. I don't have a clue where I am when I come to. It's still dark, my hands are still tied behind my back, and I'm shivering from cold. At first I panic, trying to fight out of my tethers and shake off whatever's covering my head. All that does is fill my hood with noise and make me less aware of my surroundings, so I stop. I take a few deep breaths, then try my best to be still and listen. There's the sound of a fire crackling nearby. Not close enough for me to feel its warmth, but not too far away. There are also voices, soft and distant, but loud enough to make it through whatever fabric covers my ears. Another sound cuts through it all. The same sound that rose above the chaos in my apartment. Rain is crying. As I listen, her tiny voice gets closer, as do the voices of others along with the sound of footsteps crunching in the snow. My heart races as I prepare for the people, witches, or monsters that are coming my way. To kill me? Maybe. To kill my baby? That's the only thing that worries me. I feel a body come close, stopping right beside me. Suddenly the hood over my head gets ripped off and cold air hits my face. The distant fire provides the only light, and I blink my blindness away, allowing my eyes to focus. The first thing I see is trees everywhere, branches heavy with the recent snowfall, the ground covered by a fresh layer. I can't hear or see any signs of city life. We must be deep in the woods. Whoever lifted my hood steps behind me and unties my wrists.
Moments later.
Another captor passes me, Rain. I cry through a painfully dry throat and pull Her close, trying to give her every ounce of warmth in my body, doing whatever I can to protect her and make her feel safe. My touch seems to settle her a little, which in turn calms my nerves the slightest bit. Beautiful. I hear that same voice, the familiar woman from my apartment, though now she sounds soft and nurturing. I look up to find the source of the sound and see a cloaked figure a few paces away. She's outlined by the fire in the background, so I can't see anything except her profile. She's absolutely beautiful, the woman says again. Who the hell is this? Who kidnaps a mother and child, only to tell the bound a mom how pretty her baby is? The figure steps closer until she's right next to me, and as the moonlight illuminates her face, I finally get to see her. I'm so proud of you, she says as she kneels down and touches my cheek. It takes another moment before I can place her, because it's been almost 20 years, but that smile, those eyes, that voice, the small scar on her forehead that I used to run my finger over. I'm staring into the face of my dead mother.